Today we are going to review a 2022 Bronco Big Bend edition. I'm Justin.
And I am Aaron.
And this is Husman Bros. And before we go too much further, please subscribe for more great content like this. So, Bronco.
Yeah. Now, I wore my Sasquatch shirt, but this is not the Sasquatch edition.
So, Aaron, this is a Big Bend edition, which is midline.
Yes,
okay? It's
absolutely.
not the base stripper. How much does one of these cost?
This is a 2022. You can pick these up used right now for around $30,000. The original MSRP on this was $42,000. Now, I think they've come down a little bit right now. I think you might be able to get into a brand new 2024 for around $39,000 or so. But this is an off-road capable vehicle, although granted, it probably does not see the trails nearly as much as it should.
Yeah, as you see here, this one has a setup for our father to tow it behind his motorhome. So this is more a tow rig than an off-road rig, but this is still a very capable off-roader. Our friends Light Bright were telling us about their Bronco. Now, they liked the Raptor edition. They did not care for the two-door edition. The two-door version, they said, was not as good, but this certainly is a capable enough off-roader.
And it is nostalgic. The Bronco is a classic. It is something that I remember as a kid. A lot of Broncos out there. And this certainly brings back that nostalgia. It's got a great look to it. And some might even say it looks very similar to a Jeep Renegade.
I think Jeepers would get angry if you said that. So let's start talking about the features of this car. And we'll start up front here at the power plant, the heart of the whole thing.
That's what makes it go.
Yeah, it is. So this truck has a 2.3 liter, 4-cylinder, EcoBoost engine. Now this motor, even though it's a 4-cylinder, produces 300 horsepower and 325 foot-pounds of torque. Now, if you notice, there are no engine covers. You can see what's going on here. The reason for that, according to the owner of this car, is that it tends to run a little hot anyway. Now, I like it without the engine covers. I like the rawness of it. It just seems old school to me. Now, there is an upgrade version of this, not of this motor, but there's an upgraded motor for this car.
They have a V6 in this as well, right?
Absolutely. It's a 2.7 liter V6 with 315 horsepower, and I think it's 400 and some change in torque.
Yeah, I think like 425 foot-pounds of torque.
So a couple different engines here. I think either one's going to be great for your purposes. As we said, this one is mostly a driving around on pavement or being pulled around behind a motorhome car. But it's still plenty powerful to do what you need. Remember, when you're off-roading, it's not horsepower that's important, it's the torques that come with it.
But the horsepower's cool on the road.
That's the fun part, and we'll talk about that with our Turbo S. Now let's talk about some other features on the front end here. These are called trail sights. These are on the hood. You'll see a lot of people that have a cable running to keep the branches off the paint, but their real purpose is that they line up with the front wheels so that when you're up in the air, you can know approximately where your wheels are. The bumper height is an indicator of how far you can forward this car. That's how deep you can take this car underwater, which is pretty impressive for a car that you just buy off the lot.
Yeah, especially one without a snorkel.
Absolutely. Now, some of these do come with lighted Broncos. That's an aftermarket kit you can put on, certainly, if that's important to you. These are the upgraded headlights on this version. The upgrade is the LED and the halo ring on these headlights. Now, these are built to be off-road vehicles. I think everybody who drives an off-road vehicle will tell you theirs is the best, but Ford has done some special things with the traction control on this car. Aaron, what can you tell us about that?
Oh yeah, the not traction control, but really the suspension on this truck is the GOAT.
The greatest of all time?
No, it goes over any terrain. That is what GOAT stands for. It's the GOAT Terrain Management System. So this has a dial with 6 different settings for off-road usage, and those settings are going to change the traction control, the throttle sensitivity, the shift points on it. So this one is built to go off-road, ready to go. Turn the dial to the right kind of terrain and off you go. This one in particular does not include the locking and unlocking differential. It does not include the option to disconnect the sway bar. If those are options that are really important to you, you need to choose the higher levels of Bronco, up to maybe the Raptor, which has got it all. On this, we've also got some nice plastic molding here. We've got the mirrors, we've got the fenders, which are removable, and of course, with your off-road vehicles, Jeeps are always famous for being able to take the doors off. But with the Bronco, you can do the same thing. Take these doors off and you have a lot of wind in your sides and in your hair. But the beauty of the Bronco is that the mirrors are actually attached to this molding on the front of the windshield. So when you take the doors off, you can still have your side view mirrors, something that you have to get an extra part for if you want to do that on your Jeep. Now, Dad has done a little bit of customization here. He's gotten the black Bronco logo, which I think looks really good. And so he's working on making that change over to black. So cosmetically, I think that looks really great. Justin, tell us about the transmission.
So there's two options on this car for transmission. You can do a 7-speed manual, or what this car has, which is a 10-speed automatic. And I'm going to tell you, people that love 3 pedals, and I drive a 3-pedal car every day, I will take an automatic with more speeds than I could shift anytime. I would feel like a trucker trying to shift through 10 different gears here. Part of what that transmission does is helps you with your fuel mileage. Now, this is a 4-cylinder with a turbo and a 10-speed automatic transmission. Dad tells us he's getting a little over 21 miles to the gallon. I've been driving our Cayenne Turbo S every day for the past couple weeks, and I'm pushing 12.5 miles to the gallon, so the Bronco wins over that every time. Let's talk about the interior on this car. Now, with every Ford, we have the keypad here. I've had a couple Fords, and I do love this aspect. I'm not a guy who carries a lot of keys around, and this really makes me happy. I love this part of it. Now, the interior on these cars is pretty Spartan. It's built to get muddy, it's built to get dirty, but there is some comfort involved. Now, in the interior here, it is Spartan. This is an off-road vehicle, but it is still pretty nice. We've got an 8-inch Apple touchscreen here. I believe it's Android compatible as well. Dual zone heating, we've got heated seats. They are cloth seats, but there can be an advantage to that. If you're off-road, you can just scrub them off and be good to go. It's got push button start, controls on the steering wheel. This is not a luxury car, but it's certainly very comfortable. That's a very nice car on the inside, and it's got power windows, power mirrors, all the good stuff. And here is the GOAT system that Aaron was talking about. And if you notice, the window switches are here in the middle so that when you take those doors off, you don't have to unplug anything. This is a modern vehicle. So if you look at the gauges here, Dad's got it set to the off-road gauges, but you can switch the gauges around to get different data. This shows you the angle you're sitting at, the tilt that you're at, and the differentials and how your 4-wheel drive is set up. In addition here, if you notice, he's got a tiny little Sasquatch on the dashboard. So Jeepers, for some reason, put little ducks on each other's cars. Apparently Bronco guys put Sasquatches on them, and I think I'm going to start a new tradition because, again, the Cayenne Turbo S gets only a few miles to the gallon. I'm going to start putting $5 bills on lifted Porsches when I see them. But this is a completely modern vehicle with most of the amenities that you want. You do have manual shifting available to you in addition to the automatic. Just a really simple interior, not too much to worry about. We do have a USB and a USB-C here in the driver's compartment here, and just a nice, reasonable car. As with so many off-road vehicles, these are infinitely custom, not infinitely I suppose, but pretty close to it, customizable. Dad has installed these grab handles here. You have only a couple here. My mother is vertically challenged and she needs these to get up in the car, but they're here as well for when you're rocking around on the trail. Okay, let's head to the back of the car now. We'll show you a couple of the features on the back of it, and then we'll take the top down and go for a ride. All right, Aaron, let's show off the rear end. Yeah. And tell me about some of the options that are available for this car.
Let's talk about some of the junk in the trunk here, all right? Okay. So with this one, really just talking options. So there are a lot of things that you could do. I mean, this is one of those cult-like vehicles that is, people are going to scale it just like they do with the Wranglers and like they do with the 4Runners. So this one has 17-inch alloys on it. You could get 18s if that's what you're into, but you could also get a more off-road tires. You got a little bigger sidewall, so you're ready to go off-road. Of course, we talked about the fenders, and I'm sure there's some different fender options as well. The top, this one has a soft top, obviously, but you can get a hard top on this as well. What's cool about this soft top, Dad likes that you could just pull the back so you almost have a bit of a sunroof here. So really cool. And I know when Dad had a Jeep when I was a kid, what I loved the most was getting it to go to the grocery store and taking the entire top off of the car just to go get a gallon of milk. I'm gonna pretend like I am gonna make a run to the grocery store, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like to take this top off here in just a minute. But other options that are available, you can get upgraded bumpers, a little bit more robust bumpers. So there's also lighting options available. This one has the optional LED taillights, and there's other exterior lighting options available as well. There's a different spare tire setup than this one has, which would be another upgrade. So you notice that this camera housing sticks out from the back of the spare tire. Dad has installed a trailer hitch mount that sticks out ever so slightly farther than the camera housing. The reason for that is if you're backing up and you do not notice that you are too close and you break this camera housing, you cannot just replace the camera housing. You have to replace the entire spare tire setup. So it gets prohibitively more expensive to do that. So pro tip, get yourself a hitch cover. So it is a Bronco, and there are a lot of parts available from Ford, and the longer these are out, the more and more aftermarket parts are available as well.
Now, this one is built for overlanding, which means camping out in nature, something I really don't want to do, but I kind of want to because there's this. So if you notice here, there's no zipper to open this rear window to just dig stuff out, so you have to hit these two little latches, lift it up,
and then put the prop rod down right there.
There is a gas strut system available, but simple car, simple pieces. Although I will point out, there are all the parts here for a hardtop. This was originally set up for a hardtop.
Now, what's a hardtop cost?
About $5,000. So if you folks will subscribe, watch a lot of videos, maybe we'll get Dad one for Christmas.
Now, why do you like this so much? What is the point of lifting this up?
It's neat.
Uh-huh.
That's
so
it.
What's the purpose of it? There you go.
So that you can picnic. You see you've got a little table here. Again, I don't think I ever want to camp, eat, sleep, or do anything outside, but if I had a little table, I might have a little picnic.
All right, so do you have anything else we want to show inside?
I just want to point out, again, the simplicity of this, the rubber mats, the rubber trays. This thing is built to hose out.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do our favorite thing that we love to do with cars, drive them. But before we do that, let's take this top off. Show you what that looks like.
Let's do it. I know that Aaron said we're going to take the top off, but our dad being our dad, he put the kibosh on it because you have to take off this panel and this panel in order to remove the top. And the word on the streets is that if you take these off too often, they stretch and you get a leak. As a guy who's owned a couple Jeeps that leaked in the past, I certainly don't want to do this to his brand new car. He also said if we remove the whole top and put it all the way back, you end up with a giant stack on the back of the truck and you can't see out of the back. So what we'll do is we'll show you how to open the front part here. Aaron, what do we do?
Well, there's a couple of clips right here on either side above the passenger and the driver.
Okay.
So we pull those down.
All right.
And now it is loose, so you can just grab the edge of the top on the outside. Yep, you got to pull it down. Just grab the edge of the top on the outside.
Okay,
and you just lift it up and fold it back.
All right. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, that seems like it's going to be very noisy.
Well, it will be. I mean, just as noisy as your convertible is. But if you got a vehicle,
there's a lot sticking out on top here.
Well, it's true, but I mean, you're talking about an off-road vehicle. It's probably clanking and vibrating and noisy.
You're probably not.
It's not a Porsche, all right?
I guess you're probably not doing the top like this to go down the tollway.
And you're probably not going 100 miles an hour doing the top like this. I don't think.
You're not. So the other thing I see here is this has become pretty tall.
Yeah, it is a little taller now, especially if you had maybe bigger tires on this. I mean, this thing is going to be, almost 7 feet tall, I think.
So there are some garages this might not fit in, and as someone who has driven a truck with something sticking up top underneath a thing, it's not great, and this is more expensive than the rack that I ruined. Absolutely. Now, I think we should take it for a drive. Aaron, I'm going to leave that to you.
All right, thank you. Okay, first drive in the Bronco. Now, something that's very familiar, I drive an Expedition daily, and this one has the different modes. When you turn the knob, it's got the same kinds of modes that I've got: Sport, Eco, Normal, and then it's got Slippery. Now, my Expedition is two-wheel drive, so when it gets to Slippery, then it's just two-wheel drive and a little bit different gearing for traction control. When we get into Slippery here in the Bronco, now we're shifting into four-wheel drive. And so a lot more driving modes than what I have. We are in Normal right now, and it did do the auto shut off on me. Not a big fan of that. I've got that in the Expedition as well, but there is certainly Ford that has a button here where you can turn that off. I've become more used to it the more I've driven it. So we're gonna get out of the parking lot here, but then I want to give Sport mode a try because that was a wild ride in the Expedition, and so wondering what it's like with a little bit smaller engine. You know, growing up with old cars, it wasn't uncommon that my car died at a stoplight. It's just funny that now it's planned. All right, so we are on the open road. I've got the top back. This is a nice drive. That's what I love about these off-road vehicles. Like I said, I had a Jeep for a while, and that was just a lot of fun to be able to take the top off. And I love my convertible, so I do like the open air. One thing about the modes is that you can shift these. I'm not going to shift into a four-wheel drive mode. Yes. Actually, this one's not letting me. So I do have to be at a stop in order to do the mode shift. In my truck, I can just shift them whenever I'm driving throughout the drive. I don't normally shift them a lot, but this one's gonna make me stop, so that's fine. We'll do that. So I've shifted to the sport mode. Buckle up, hang onto your hat. Here we go. So we are trying out the sport mode. It certainly gives it a turbo boost, and it's a little bit more responsive when you get into the gas. It feels definitely a little sportier, so it lives up to the billing. We are in Dallas. I'm not going to be doing any testing of the off-road capabilities of this. Frankly, there are just not any places to go off-road inside city limits in Dallas and where we are. So going to be mostly concrete driving, testing the other modes, but really just wanted to get in it, do a drive, show the interior and some of the features, what we've got in the Bronco. But it certainly has a lot of pep when you put it into sport mode. Now it's peppier, I would say it's probably not as fast as a Raptor or one of the other higher versions of the Bronco, and certainly nowhere near as fast as our Cayenne Turbo S. But you know what, if you're late for your date or to work or something like that, put this in sport mode and it should help you get there a little bit faster. So you will find when you put it in sport mode, the steering gets a little bit tighter and the gas pedal is a little bit more responsive. So the other three driving modes beyond sport are slippery, roads, mud and ruts, and then sand. So like I said, we're not going to test out any of those today, but that is what is available on the Bronco. As for the interior, I like it. It is simple, it is rugged. So it does take some of the cues from other Ford vehicles. In the instrument cluster, it has a menu and a gauge to show you your pitch and your roll. It doesn't really do me a whole lot of good in the Expedition because I don't have any off-road capabilities. So if I'm pitching or rolling too much, then I'm probably going to be in trouble. But in this one, obviously, it does have a functional use. Now, there is a lot of body roll, even driving around on the streets. I'm not taking turns very hard at the moment, and it's still, I can feel the roll because this is an off-road vehicle with a stiffer suspension. So driving in the sport mode, I'm getting shifts at around 3,000 RPM, 2.7, 3,000, you know, so it's going a little bit higher in the RPMs before it will actually shift. And if I move over to the economy, it's going to shift a lot lower. I've driven in the economy mode before. I don't drive in the sport mode very much, but I don't see a big difference between the normal mode and the economy mode, in my truck at least. And so I'm not going to drive this as much as I drive mine to tell you really the difference, but I would imagine it's probably going to be about the same. Since this car was built for off-road, what's a lot more important off-road is torque. You need a more torque than you need horsepower off-road. So naturally, this car is going to be geared lower. So this rarely gets, I haven't seen it touch 3,000 RPM yet, which makes a lot of sense because it's really trying to generate torque, not power. So I stopped and shifted into the manual mode. And certainly here I can get up to 4,000 RPM, you know, but I'm going to try not to blow out Dad's transmission. Of course, it's as great as any manual mode in any automatic transmission. And I use that great. If I could use both hands, I'd put my quotation marks up. But you can certainly change how it's geared if you go into manual, and you can run it a little bit higher. I'm not really feeling that much of an exhilarating difference that I would do it, but to each his own. You could certainly do that in an off-road setting if you wanted to pick your gear. I could imagine that would be useful. Although with this truck and the GOAT mode, Ford has spent an extensive amount of time researching the right shift points for off-road uses based on the modes that they are in. So you might, if you're not experienced or maybe even an expert, you might consider just letting the builders do what they do. I'm going to shift out of that manual mode now because I'm never a big fan of that in automatics. Now the thing about the Bronco is it is not a luxury vehicle. This dashboard is hard plastic, which is not luxurious, but it is utilitarian, which is what the Bronco is all about. This is a sport utility vehicle from back in the day before that was in vogue. It's not a mall crawler. It is a sport utility vehicle. It's utilitarian from the ground up, from the grab handles to the plastic dash to the way it is laid out. So those are my initial thoughts on my first drive of the Bronco Big Bend Edition.
Well, I see you made it back in one piece.
Barely.
Barely. That's our review. Thanks for watching.
Leave any comments below, tell us what you thought, and come back and see us next time.